Our group hot topic presentation is on adolescent development. Our first subtopic is healthy eating. This section covers the impact that a proper diet makes in the life of children. The effects of a lack of a proper diet affects a child's educational growth. This is by Sergio Lopez. This presentation gives insight as to why it is hard to keep a continuously healthy diet. With new scientific discoveries, one can see how even the food pyramid that used to be our guideline to proper eating has changed, and it can be expected that it will change again. Living in a nation where we have a vast number of food choices, we have given up and have come to rely on restaurants and fast food places. The USDA and the other government organizations continue to work on providing updated information to ensure parents make the proper food selections for their children. However, the food industry is continuously reaching out to the eye of the children by creating eye-catching labels. Through these labels, although these labels provide nutritional facts, it still leaves us questioning how factual these labels can be. As much as I love Weird Al, we're not going to do this. My plate. My plate icon is divided into 5 food group categories, emphasizing the nutritional intake of the following: grains, foods that are made from wheat, rice, oats, vegetables, vary your vegetables, fruits, any fruit, and dairy. This chart gives a good example of the impact of proper and improper eating has in the educational progress of students. For the most part, our children are not given proper nutrition that can sustain them through the day. Steps to a healthier you. Set goals, prepare your meals, eat more vegetables and fruit, choose whole grains, know your portions, and choose healthy drinks. To have a good, healthy eating habit, it is essential that we put time aside and maybe even return to the days of eating as a family and making the right choices as to what we feed our bodies. Our next subtopic is multiple intelligence theory, and this is by Adam Camarena. This theory is about how teachers can modify their lesson plans to accommodate different students' learning styles. According to Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, there are 8 confirmed types and another theory types: verbal, linguistic, musical, logical, mathematical, spatial, bodily, kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalistic, and theorized existential. How can teachers utilize the multiple intelligence theory in their teaching of middle school students and EFL learners? This theory is useful to the learning of ESL learners. Delati and Tirini observed 3 different intelligences inside a classroom: logistical, mathematical, verbal linguistic, and bodily kinesthetic. As you can see, these teachers tiered their classes by their strengths or preferences, and still got their content requirement across. It allows teachers and students to be more creative inside the classroom. Adam's biggest advocate for creativity inside the classroom. Creativity and problem-solving skills. If teachers were to combine content areas, then it would expedite the critical thinking and creativity processes for students that would increase innovation in student work. Creativity increases motivation in students. This theory expedites both the problem-solving and creativity concepts that is necessary in the 21st century workplace. Teachers can hone in and adjust lesson plans to fit their average aptitudes for multiple intelligence via a simple quiz like the one in Edutopia. This presentation is no way sponsored. It allows for students to adjust their work themselves for self-enrichment and at the SPED teacher's discretion. Modify the assignments. The next subtopic is Behavioral Disorders by Stephanie Stewart. Understanding behavioral disorders can help teachers prepare. Knowing symptoms as well as resources are important. How can teachers prepare themselves better for students by understanding behavioral disorders during adolescent development? The benefits and importance of understanding, identifying, and diagnosing disorders can help keep the classroom running smoothly. And with this, we mean if you understand what is going on with your students and what they actually need, you can prepare. Mental health diagnosis. This is actually an instance where I saw an instructor speaking to a parent, telling them about their concerns, and the parent actually said, oh, they have ADHD, but it's not actually diagnosed. Well, how can the teacher prepare for this if it's not diagnosed and it's not even logged? So looking at our chart here, we have many children lack access to mental health care. Nearly 1 in 5 U.S. children are diagnosed with a mental disorder. 20% of those with a mental disorder receive care from a specialized care provider for mental health. It's the teacher's job to monitor their students. Issues rise with money paying for treatments, medication, and therapy. It is not the teacher's job to diagnose. It is important to educate the entire educational team. It's important, but with the right tools, we can help. The graph on the left shows the number of children who have ADHD in millions. We hear about it more because we are more concerned and aware about it. The graph shows us that children with ADHD are more likely to have other behavioral disorders. Creating a plan and a routine will help, but it's important to understand that students will have their bad days. Our next subtopic is Sexual and Racial Orientation in the Classroom by Michaela Ravelas. This section covers sexual and racial orientation. They are key components of adolescent development. It is important as educators to acknowledge that our students come from different backgrounds. We shouldn't be wary of all backgrounds, but rather be knowledgeable of them all. It is important to make sure our classrooms are welcoming to all of our students, not just some. Sexual and racial orientations are key components of adolescent development. Adolescents are dealing with so much as they grow up. Their racial orientation plays a part in their lives because it is so prominent in where they came from due to the culture and familiar background, while their sexual orientation defines who they are and for some, who they're going to be. When it comes to racial orientation, it is not as easy to hide. When meeting someone for the first time, it is easy to notice the color of their skin. Even key features such as eye shape can help identify someone's racial orientation. Racial background is also heavily linked to socioeconomic status. When thinking about class status, it's easy to think that ghetto equals black and middle class equals white. It might be upsetting, but that is the world we live in today. Sexual orientation. It is not as easy to identify someone's sexual orientation just by looking at them. It is assumed mostly everyone is heterosexual or straight unless it is said otherwise. One can have a hunch and think another individual might identify as homosexual or bisexual, but it is not known for sure until they are told directly by that individual what they identify as. When it comes to socioeconomic classes and sexual orientation, there is not as much of an assumption. You wouldn't exactly know the person you're hanging out with or friends with homosexual or not heterosexual until they tell you. While it is easier to hide, individuals, especially adolescents who are homosexual, are not out of the closet yet, could feel unwelcomed. Every classroom is a safe zone. When it comes to racial orientation, it is a little easier to teach these topics. An English language arts literature teacher could have the class read a story where the main protagonist is a person of color or the author is a person of color. A history teacher really has the advantage in this scenario as well. As educators, all educators should ensure that their students feel safe in their classroom. Again, every classroom is a safe zone. Lessons can be taught surrounding the LGBTQ plus community. It could be difficult for teachers who don't teach science, physical education, or health to implement lessons about the LGBTQ plus community. English literature, language arts teachers can teach lessons with novels written by these individuals. The history teachers can teach lessons about the history of the LGBTQ plus community. Overall, students need to feel safe in the classroom. It is critical for teachers to be aware of racial and sexual orientation. It shouldn't be prominent in the teacher's mind, but just to be aware of it. Students who are a different race from a majority or have a sexual orientation might feel left out. All students need to feel welcome no matter what their background is. If the teacher sets the standard for tolerance in the classroom, everyone else will follow suit.